Alexandros the godlike leapt from the ranks of the Trojans, as challenger wearing across his shoulders the hide of a leopard, curved bow and sword, while in his hands shaking 2 javelins pointed with bronze, he challenged all the best of the Argives to fight man to man against him in bitter combat. Now as soon as Menelaos the warlike caught sight of him, making his way of long strides out in front of the army, he was glad, like a lion who comes on a mighty carcass in his hunger, chancing upon the body of a horned stag or wild goat, who eats it eagerly, although against him are hastening the hounds in their speed and the stalwart young men. Thus Menelaos was happy finding godlike Alexandros there in front of his eyes, and thinking to punish the robber, straight away in all his army he sprang to the ground from his chariot. Hello everyone, welcome to Hobby Kleos. We're here today playing a battle from the Trojan War, based on the sort of first duel in the Iliad. So you just read there from the book 3 of the Iliad, going over Paris and Menelaos and their fight that they have. Going to be using some rules called sword weirdos, which allow also for solo play. So I loosely followed the rules for solo play throughout this. So into the first turn then. I decided to play as the Greeks, so I was sort of thinking more about how they played, and then the Trojans were kind of loosely controlled by the solo play rules for this. Although, as we'll see as I keep going, I kind of was a little bit flexible with how it actually went. But that's kind of the good thing about solo play rules. It doesn't really matter if you don't follow them exactly, because only you are playing them, right? So Sword Weirdos uses a system where you sort of roll dice, and it's an opposed roll. So one player rolls their dice, and the other player rolls their dice, just like that. And you're basically looking for who has the highest number. Kind of similar, I'd say, to maybe how an RPG works. So yeah, in this first turn, the Trojans were basically, because they had archers, ping a few arrows at the Greeks. And I was just moving the Greeks up kind of in unison, not trying to rush anyone into an area where they could then get attacked and ganged up on. Here we go then. So this is the first sort of action that happened. One of the Greek warriors was staggered. So that in this rule system, there's no wounds or anything. Instead, every attack has the opportunity to kill your enemy. But what's more likely to happen is the attack fails, pings off their armor, or they get some sort of status. And the more status you have, the more likely you are then to kill them. So this Greek warrior, he's staggered. He's going to have to pass a recovery test if he wants to actually do anything in the rest of the game, essentially. So there we go, moving up. Everyone in Sword Weirdos moves 5 inches. People might recognise that I'm using a Star Wars Legion ruler. Turns out that the 2-pip move is pretty much exactly 5 inches, the little measuring stick, so that was super handy just to kind of not have to make my own, just sort of stole it from there. So what we see here is Paris ends up shooting at this guy, and he jumps for cover. Because everything's measured in 5 inches, your guys jump for cover quite a long distance, but the point is that he's kind of ducking, weaving, and then he's placed down, so he's going to have to use an action to stand up next turn. In terms of the scenery that I ended up using for this game, obviously most of the battles in the Trojan War just sort of happen out in the open, in the sort of plains in front of the city in the Iliad. So I was slightly inventive with the sort of terrain I decided to use. I thought it would maybe make sense for the Trojans to have tried to kind of disrupt barricades, the road leading towards their city, knocking over some old pillars to kind of block the road there, and then setting up some kind of spiked traps to maybe prevent chariots and that sort of thing from riding through. Although obviously if you ever read the Iliad, you'll know that they don't really actually use their chariots to fight. They sort of hop off them and then usually perform some sort of long speech about how they're going to kill the other person before, sure enough, killing that other person. But obviously, the Greeks who were kind of singing at the time that the Iliad was written down about this story probably didn't really actually know how the chariots worked. So they were kind of making an educated guess that that was their function. So we see here the Trojans now starting to move up. And here's Menelaos. He is going to move up to attack this poor, helpless Trojan levy. So the combat system here, you have different sorts of dice. You always roll 2. Menelaos, because he is a mighty hero, he's using d8 for his attack. And there we go. The Trojan is using d8 for their defense, so just enough there. 14 versus 11. So you add up the scores, and that is the result. And if you get higher, then you win. You're going to roll on a table to see if they are injured, stunned, or diving for cover. If you get over double their number, you add a +1 to that table. And if you get over triple, you add a +2. And there are various modifiers that change the types of dice you're using, some of which I forgot to use in this game. But as I said before, it doesn't really matter too much when you're playing solo play. It's more about kind of the narrative and you just playing out the story yourself. So there we go, good roll. Double 6. Broke through against the D10. And there we go, you can get a roll of a 5, which is going to be this Greek warrior retreating, pushed back by the attack from the Trojan there. Now this Trojan warrior, he has a move of 2, so all of the people I decided would have a move of 2 when I was constructing characters. So I figured that that would be about right. If, however, you need to use 2 movement to get into combat, you get a dice bonus. So although this Trojan warrior would usually only be rolling d6, he upped his dice to a d8, which meant that he actually was able to threaten Menelaos. And you really can kind of start to weigh people down with numbers. This is actually one of the points where I made a minor error in the rules, because actually Menelaos was a 2v1, so he should have actually been rolling d10 to attack. But when you're kind of playing on your own, you don't necessarily always spot those little mistakes. But I ended up making a few that went the other way, so it didn't make too much of a difference to the actual battle itself. So there we go. Here's our first casualty. This Trojan warrior killed by the Greek as we enter into the second turn of the game. So once everyone is activated, you start the next turn. So there we go, the first casualty. Now the Trojans are going to get to respond. So this archer, he gets a nice shot off there with an 11. Easily beats the armor. I did not roll very well on the armor for this game. And there we go, the archer manages to kill that Greek warrior too. The Greeks were much more heavily armed, experienced warriors, outnumbered by the Trojans in this game. So losing a warrior like that to an archer was not great. I switched into the D4s here because I realised that in the first turn, if an archer tries to shoot twice, then they should move down a dice for the second one, which I've been forgetting to do. So obviously that made the Trojans significantly more likely when shooting to do well than if I'd been using the rules there, but luckily it didn't really affect the first turn too much. Here we see a little recover test. So you roll 2d6, then you have to beat that score with your willpower, which this Greek did absolutely fine, and he's just going to bundle in this poor Trojan warrior who is outnumbered significantly now. And there we go, that Trojan warrior is killed. You needed 10 to kill, but because there was a +1, the 9 was enough to do it. So the Trojans really looking in a bit of a bad way, but of course they've still got Paris left to activate in turn 2. And Paris being a hero, he's got significantly better stats, although I didn't make him quite as good as Menelaos when it came to the fighting. It was, after all, Paris was not really the best warrior, more of an archer in the Iliad, and kind of looked down on a little bit by the other heroes as not such a heroic weapon back then. So here we go, we're moving this guy up. Again, small error here, he shouldn't have been able to move twice. But in the end, he didn't really end up doing too much that would matter. The models that I'm using for my Trojan War, my Iliad projects. So the warriors I've got from Warlord Games, from their Bronze Age selection. But the heroes I got from Wargames Foundry. So Wargames Foundry models, they're ever so slightly taller. And I actually quite like that because it just gave the heroes that little bit of extra presence. And rather than them kind of blending in, they're just that little half a head over their warriors. And considering that the heroes, of course, often demigods or, you know, these extremely powerful, influential figures, it felt kind of right to have them just that little bit bigger there. So there we go, Paris, in classic Paris fashion, managed to do not very much, but now Menelaos, he's going to charge in. Gets a nice roll of 12. And that is going to be enough to beat. So Menelaos now will get to roll to see if he can kill. Yes, he gets 10. Spot on, so he has killed another Trojan. And at this point, it's not looking great for the Trojans. The Greeks have managed to kind of clear up their little shield wall they had going on, and it's just the archers in Paris. And one little guy left over here. He's going to hurl himself in, try and rescue his prince. Nothing doing on that though. Comfortably saved with those D10. The little tokens that I'm noting down, they're actually from the original release of Kill Team, but they actually work really well for this. You need tokens for someone being stunned, you need them tokens to see if they've moved once or twice. Kill Team have arrows, double arrows, and little kind of markers that have a kind of explosion on. Super convenient for this game. And you need to mark stuff like that because if you've moved twice, for example, and someone tries to shoot you, you're more likely to kind of miss the shot sort of thing. So you just want to keep track of a few things like that. Although, as I say, solo play doesn't matter too much if you get things a little bit wrong. So here, one of the archers trying to defend Paris, who was looking like he was in trouble, managed to actually force Menelaos to dive out of the way, which is going to mean that Menelaos now won't really be likely to do anything Paris too much. Not this turn, anyway. He's going to have to stand up and walk all the way back. Here he goes. Although I think Sword Weirdos works really well for this kind of battle, I might end up slightly tweaking a few of the rules just to make it slightly more Iliad-centric. It's a really good rule system because you can use it for pretty much any historical/fantasy sort of skirmish. But it doesn't have quite that kind of specific element to it. If anyone watching this does know of a rule system sort of skirmish that can be used solo play, designed specifically for the Trojan War, let me know. I do know of a couple. I think there's a game called Tribal I was looking at, but because it has a kind of hidden card mechanic, it's not really solo playable, so unfortunately not going to be great for this particular project, but there we go. So this was an interesting little mechanic because the Trojan warrior actually was successful in trying to wound the Greek, but actually he rolled so poorly then on the injury table that the Greek got to kind of make a counter attack. An interesting thing, because obviously you can have a success and then get punished for it. Wonder, if that's exactly fair, but it does make for fun little cinematic moments. You never know, even if you get a success, even if you're the strongest hero, that guy might just roll badly and you're able to counter that. So here we go. Didn't get the camera angle great here, but there we go. The archer is just moving in. He was hoping to rescue Paris. And now, of course, Menelaos is going to attack. Rolling an 11. Paris, he's just got regular armor, so he's on the d8s as well. There we go, a 7. Accidentally knocked that dice. I actually had to go back and look through the footage to check what I'd rolled there. Handy that I was filming. So I had to go back and think, did I roll over double? Didn't though. So what ended up happening, Paris avoided death narrowly, but he was knocked down and stunned. And I actually decided to end the game here. Although obviously, really, I should have just gone on to kill Paris. What happens in the real Iliad, of course, is that pretty much exactly like that, Menelaos is just so much better than Paris at fighting, even though Paris has been given sort of weapons by his brother Hector. He's just kind of beaten up, basically. And he's about to be killed, and then Aphrodite swoops down and saves him. So I thought, perfect. It's ended exactly the way that it did in the Iliad. He's lying on the ground, Menelaos standing over him. Aphrodite can whisk him away. So there we go. That was the first of my little projects. I'm planning to kind of go through, paint up various other little heroes and do other sort of scenes from the Iliad and maybe from some of the extended mythology beyond the very narrow window of the Trojan War that you get there. I don't know how often I will end up posting to this channel. Probably not very frequently. But if people are interested in following along, hit like and subscribe. And yeah, I'll probably end up doing other projects as well. So won't always be Iliad focused, might just be kind of sporadic interest from me. But there we go. Thanks for watching, everyone.